Hey guys, it's Selwen here, today bringing you the kitty cat, Feral Druid, and since the changes a few months ago, it's actually pretty good. So what's it all about? So Feral is going to be all about bleed dots and combo play. Your two resources are energy that you're going to use in abilities and generate stun passively, depending on haste. Combo points are generated by most of your abilities like Shred, your most spammable ability, and doing 50% more damage and having a double chance to crit while stealthed, plus does 20% more damage on targets with bleed. And Rake, one of your primary dots, also doing more damage, double in fact if used from stealth. They're gonna generate you 1 point, but if they crit, they generate 2 instead. Those combo points are then to be spent on Rip, a stronger bleed, more points you have, more damage is gonna do, and Ferocious Bite, a direct damage ability working in the same way. Your cooldowns include Tiger's Fury, increasing your overall damage by 15% and generating extra energy, and Berserk, making your abilities cost 50% less energy and increasing it by another 50. Meaning you do more of the same but easier and more spammable. And your artifact ability is Ashamane's Frenzy, another bleed ability, plus generates 3 combo points, plus while active increases your overall damage by 30%. Your passives include Omen of Clarity, having a chance to proc from your attacks, making Shred, Swipe and Thrash become free cast, and your Mastery increases your bleed damage. Now, what about your talents? You're gonna have 2 primarily single target builds with minimal differences. The Jagged Wounds build, highly focused on bleeds, kinda shit now, and the Incarnation build with a little bit more focus on Shred. There will be minimal gameplay differences, but big changes on stats. And then your multi-target or Mythic Plus build, which is practically the Jagged Wounds build, but with, again, minor differences. Currently, Incarnation is going to pull ahead, since in 7.3 Jagged Wounds was nerfed, so take that in mind. Even with the Antor's tier set that is focused around Rip, Incarnation still seems to stand, but more on that in the advanced section. So for your Incarnation build, in the first tier you want Blood Sense, increasing your crit chance by 10% on targets that have your bleeds, meaning it's practically a permanent increase. Second tier, you can choose whatever you prefer the most, Wild Charge for a leap or Displacer Beast for a blink. I personally recommend Displacer Beast for raiding, since it helps you get away from stuff quicker, and remember that you can use your Interrupt as a mini cap closer if you're not gonna need it, obviously, and Wild Charge for dungeons or out and about in the world, and Renewal if you need extra survivability. Third tier, you can choose whatever you want to get those little benefits. Balanced Affinity seems to be the most worthwhile one for a range increase on your abilities, and in those very rare occasions where you can reach the mob or boss for some good old chicken action. Fourth tier, again, you can choose whatever you want, they just utility choices, so pick depending on what you're gonna be doing. For raiding overall, doesn't really matter unless there's ads. Typhoon is pretty cool for Sanguine Puddles, and Mighty Bash, good overall. Fifth tier would be Incarnation, King of the Jungle, replacing your Berserk for a more powerful cooldown, doing the same but acts as if you'd stealthed for its entire duration, which is gonna highly boost your Shred and Rake damage, like I said earlier. Next tier, Savage Roar, another combo costing ability, increasing your overall damage by 15%, so just something to keep up. Even Brutal Slash, which is primarily an AoE ability, can also work in single target. Should take this whenever you have a chance to hit 2 targets or more, though. Sabertooth is the weakest overall, only take it if you don't really care about DPS and want let's just say steady playstyle, because you're just gonna do Shreds and Furious Bites and Rakes occasionally. And last tier, Moment of Clarity, making your Omen of Clarity proc twice as often and stacks 2 buffs, plus increasing the damage of the ability that you're gonna consume it with by 20% and still increasing your energy counts by 30. Now for the Jagged Wounds builds, everything stays pretty much, but you want to take the talent, obviously, making your bleeds tick faster and in turn do more damage. And because of that, the last talent you want is also Blood Talents. Every time you do a regrowth, increases your next 2 abilities damage by 20%. So you want to fit it during your normal rotation and use it for your bleeds. And finally, for your multi-target build, you want Predator, boosting your Tiger's Fury by an extra 4-second duration, and every time a target with your bleed dies, resets its cooldown. So great for dungeons or adds. Definitely want Jagged Wounds for dungeons, but Incarnation for boss fights like the Mistress still is better, or I would imagine Tyrannical. Brutal Slash replacing your spammable AoE swipe for a much more powerful ability on 3 charges. And last tier, Moment of Clarity, but Blood Talents can also work if you can combine them with Brutal Slash. Moment of Clarity is far more easier to handle though. Alright, that covers your talents. Now let's talk about your rotation. Starting with your single target one, no cooldowns, and playing with Incarnation. So as stated before, starting in Prowl or Stealth is a DPS increase, so remember to do so always. Then you want to start by applying your first bleed dot, Rake, and just keep it active throughout. It's one of your main priorities, so refresh below 4.5 seconds and the remaining time will add up. Then you're gonna go for Shred and build combo points until 5 for Savage Roar. The quantity is gonna depend either you crit or not for the extra points. You also want to keep it up and never let it drop. However, you can just refresh it when it's about to drop anywhere below 10 seconds or so. It's fine since its duration will add up from that point on. Then you go back to Shred for your second combo point spender and Bleed. Rip. And just like Savage Roar, you want to keep it up and refresh below 8 seconds. Now, both of those abilities are only to be used at 5 combo points, never less than that. Pretty basic, but something to keep in mind. Then after that, just keep with those 2 dots and buff using those set of rules. Keep spamming Shred until another 5 combo points, and if neither Rip or Savage Roar need to be refreshed, you can use Ferocious Bite. Now, it's a simple ability, does direct damage, and you spend those 5 combo points that you don't need, but its damage increases per energy spent, meaning you only want to use it when at 50 energy for more damage. It will be a downtime since you don't want to overcap points while you are just pulling energy to do so, but is a DPS increase. And then just go back to Shreds and follow the same rules. As for overcapping points, in general, you want to avoid as much as possible. The only time it should happen is if you're sitting at 4 points and your Shred crits, but there's nothing you can do about that. You're also gonna get random procs of Omen of Clarity, but nothing changes. You simply want to consume them with Shred, but even if you have a proc active, don't overcap combo points just to consume that said proc, okay? Just spend the points first and then use the Shred. Should you use your other abilities with it, though? Not really, unless if you have the Lufa Lego, you can indeed use Thrash for the bleed dot, but only use it with set proc. So then after that, just keep track of your dot timers and make the best decision on what to refresh first and when to use the bites. All of that is gonna depend on your situation. I use Tell Me When to track all of that, so check in the description on how to get it and my profile. After a while of playing, you will get an idea on how fast you can build points and your energy regen. Then you can make the best decisions on trying to fit all of those abilities and what's the best time for you to use them. Now, when to use Tiger's Fury, Ashman Frenzy, and Incarnation. So your opener would be the same. You would start in Stealth, go for the Rake, followed by Shred for points, to then pop Savage Roar. Only after you want to use Incarnation, never before. If you're using Sabertooth or Brutal Slash instead, you can just skip the Savage Roar step and go straight for Incarnation after that first Rake, and you want to follow that Incarnation with a Tiger's Fury. Now, as for Tiger's Fury, is both a damage increaser and an energy generator. For the most part, you want to use it to give you energy, but you also want to use it whenever available, as long as you're not gonna overcap energy, since the damage increase is highly beneficial. So you definitely want to stack it with your other cooldowns. Don't save it for certain moments, have less than about 50 energy or so, use it. It's out of global cooldowns, so when you click it, you can go straight for a Shred or a Ferocious Bite later on to make sure you don't stand near the cap. Now, during Incarnation, energy management doesn't really matter since the cost was cut by 50%, so just focus on getting damage out. So after that, do Ashman's Frenzy for another bleed and 3 combo points, plus is going to increase your overall damage. Follow that by a shred, and if at 5 combo points, finally use your rip. Then just keep with your normal rotation. Remember that shred is going to almost always generate 2 points due to its crit increase from incarnation, so take that in mind. Refresh all of your dots accordingly and keep Savage Roar up. Once all of that is in a good place, you still want to use bites when at 5 combo points, and during incarnation you can use them freely because, again, due to the energy cost reduction. If you're using Saber Tooth, well, you no longer need to refresh rip, so just focus on the bites. Even without the talents, this is gonna happen anyway when your target reaches 25% of health, so keep that in mind as well. Once there, just do bites and they will refresh your rip. Using cooldowns mid-fight will follow the same idea. A Tiger's Fury I just talked about earlier on how to use it. Ashman's Frenzy, just think of it as a combo point generator, but don't overcap combo points. Only use it with 2 points or below. However, you always want to stack it with Tiger's Fury, as it's beneficial for the damage increase. So just keep using them as they come off cooldown. As for Incarnation mid-fight, a lot of your damage is going to be focused during its duration, but you only want to stack it with Tiger's Fury and to try to pop it when you are at high energy, so you can more freely spam, and if possibly all of your dots and buff refreshed, so you can go into that shred bite combo. Ashemain is not a must to stack here. Then just keep refreshing your dots, keep Savage Roar up and do your shreds, and using bites at 50 energy. And that covers it. Now, what about other talent changes? If with Jagged Wounds nothing changes, your Incarnation will be Berserk, which is weaker. Shred is no longer gonna do as much damage and in turn not as many combo points. All the rest stay the same really, but now you want to refresh your dots a little bit later since they gonna tick faster. As for your Blood talents, does add something new to keep in mind. So after you used a combo spender at 5 points, you're gonna get a free cast of Regrowth or Roots or a Rebirth from Predatory Swiftness. Normally is like whatever, but with Blood talents, you want to fit it in your normal rotation. So in your opener, you can actually pre-cast one, so hard cast a Regrowth, then go for Stealth and then a Rake. After that, you keep you with your normal rotation and using your instant regrowths, and you're gonna get one after you use your Savage Roar for an example, and you want to consume those 2 damage buffs with your bleed dots. Now, if possible, you want to do it for Rake and Rip. If it isn't doable, just focus on using it for your Rake. That is your highest priority. If you can do with both, great. If not, for Rake and whatever the other ability that you might potentially use after that one. So sometimes you might come into situations where you're gonna have to delay it a little bit until a Rake needs refresh, so you can finally use that Regrowth and then refresh it. Maybe possibly Rip needs to be refreshed as well, and you can combo that with the buff, okay? As for Brutal Slash is normally an AoE ability, but you can indeed fit it during your normal rotation. If you happen to be in a boss fight on a dungeon, for an example, just replace the shred for it. Obviously, you want to save it for multiple targets, but if that isn't going to happen, you can indeed use it anyway. And that covers the single target. What about multi-target? So, as is the case for dot-based specs, a lot of it is going to depend on the target count and the durability of the adds or trash. So on 2 targets, nothing changes, alright, keep with your normal rotation, but just multi-dot with your Rake and Rip, meaning you're not gonna do a lot of bites, if any. And you also want to keep the Thrash dot up, but only the dot, okay, don't spam it. If you have Brutal Slash, use it on cooldown in the same place as you would use your Shred. As for 3 targets, is the same idea. However, now if you don't have Brutal Slash, you want to replace Shred for Swipe. 4 targets to 5, use Thrash for the dots, then Brutal Slash to keep it on cooldown. The same principle follows for the other targets count, by the way. Then Rake as many as you can. Once your dots are all set up, you can keep on spamming that Brutal Slash, and if at 5 combo points, place your Rip on as many targets as humanly possible. Once Brutal Slash is on cooldown and your Rake doesn't need to be refreshed and not enough points for Rip, feel free to spam Thrash or Swipe if you don't have Brutal Slash talented. If a lot of mobs, so more than 6 or 7, it's just Thrash for the bleed dot, spam Brutal Slash until empty or swipe, then feel free to spam Thrash as the damage isn't overly high, but it can proc one of your artifact traits, doing more damage. If it's swipe, just spam it instead. Now that said, in situations where the targets are gonna die super quickly, don't bother doing a lot of multi-dotting, okay? So analyze the situation. If they have small health pools, just go for one Thrash and then Brutal Slashes, then Shreds and Bites, okay, for direct damage. That is, if your dots cannot tick for a reasonable amount of time. As for cooldowns, use if needed, but keep in mind the Predator talent, your Tiger's Fury, resets every time a target dies with your bleeds, meaning on Dungeon Trash you want to use it on cooldown and you're gonna get a lot of them. And that covers it all. Now for advanced topics and stats. So there's not a lot more to talk about. One thing I was saving was tier set talk and snapshotting. So if you don't know what's snapshotting, is an old mechanic that doesn't really exist anymore, but there used to be a time where you could create this perfect situation, or more like wait for said perfect situation, for things like trinkets or other buffs to then apply your dots, and for their entire duration they would hit according to the level of power that you had when you used them, even after those buffs drop. Nowadays that doesn't happen, they adapt dynamically to your current power level. However, that isn't the case in Feral. Two abilities still work that way: Blood Talents, which we just discussed, but also Tiger's Fury. It even states on a tooltip and is easy to miss. So when you use Tiger's Fury and you apply your dots like Rake or Rip or even Ashemain, during their entire duration while it's up, they're gonna do the 50% more damage, even if your Tiger's Fury buff drops. Meaning, you want to time things perfectly where you want to do the refresh of those said bleeds while Tiger's Fury is up. Rake should be easy to do, but Rip can prove a little bit more difficult. Now don't go out of your way to do it, but it's something for you to keep in mind. As for the tier 21, it does add something somewhat interesting. The first bonus just makes your Rip have a chance to take an extra time. Good, but nothing that changes on your thinking really. The 4-piece, however, the ticks of Rip have a chance to proc a free Ferocious Bite, free from combo points and energy. So you just want to use it as it pops up, pretty much. Overall, there's going to be a change in stats, so in the Incarnation build, versatility is usually going to reign supreme, increasing your overall damage, followed by crit. More crits means more combo points. Now, Mastery increases your bleed damage, but only on your bleeds. In Incarnation, Shred and Bites are a big thing, especially when you put the tier set in here. And they aren't gonna be boosted by it, so worthless to stack up. As for Haste, it's okay, nothing special, you don't really bother by it, but Verse and Crit is the way to go, and of course item level. However, with this tier set, Haste is gonna be more beneficial because Haste increases your dot ticks, meaning it can proc more often, along with energy generation. So once you get the full tier set, Haste might be something you want to look for as well. Now another thing, it also reduces some cooldowns, primarily Brutal Slash, meaning if you're gonna stack Haste, might make Brutal Slash more appealing to use than Savage Roar, or almost equivalent, since Brutal Slash does more damage than Shred. So just some things to keep in mind. All of that is gonna depend on your character, just like the Jagged Wounds, which will also benefit this tier set. So Simming will tell you for sure on these things. Either way, the rotation doesn't change much, but I cannot really tell you those answers with absolute certainty. As for legendaries, your talent ring makes a fantastic addition as it provides you with Soul of the Forest talent, which you never want to take, but if you can take it in addition to Incarnation, is awesome. Plus your Helm is great as well to extend the Tiger's Fury duration, so make sure to time your combo spenders when you pop it. And for the loofah, I already talked about, and all the rest doesn't really change your gameplay. And that covers it all. I hope it was helpful, guys. As always, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. Check in the description for the add-ons. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.